we'll go ahead and get started, and if we get some others joining us, then we'll be able to go ahead and conduct business with some voting. But I think we can go ahead and get started. Beaufort North Regional Plan Implementation Committee to order and ask for everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I'm very patriotic, so I always appreciate when we have the opportunity to do that. I believe all the FOIA requests, publications have gone out, and I'll ask, well, I can't ask for approval of the minutes. So these minutes have been carrying over since what, May? Yeah, these minutes have been carrying over since May, and I think I was hoping that after summer we'd start getting more serious about getting a quorum and getting people here. I think prior to summer we really had a lot of pretty good attendance, a lot of good interaction. Not sure what's happened, but let's see if we can't encourage everybody else to come and do that with us. I'll open it up. Are there any citizen comments? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close that. I know on the agenda here we have a discussion of growth boundaries. The Mayor Murray is not able to attend today because he's had a death in the family. So I don't know that we can have a real meaningful discussion about growth boundaries. Ask for any comments from anybody about that, or if they want to have some discussion.
Recommend we table it until.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike,
yes.
we can't even vote. We can't even vote on that. Remember, we're very limited in what we can do here. And I guess, do we stop a minute and even have a discussion about moving forward with this meeting for the third time in this format? Because just about everything we've been doing in informational purposes is great. I love learning these things, but we can't do anything, and the rest of the group, we're going to have to go back and do this stuff again. And I just wonder if it doesn't make sense to stop and put together, try to do some communication with the rest of this team and this group and say, guys, we have got to have a meeting. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to ask staff and everybody to prepare, to come forward, to present to us, and nothing can be done with the information. I want to be respectful to everybody's time, staff and all these volunteers and the people that are here. Do we just say there's no meeting today due to lack of quorum and reach out to the rest of the group? I wanted to pose that question because it's the third one, Mike, in a row, third meeting now that we have no.
No, it's either the fourth or fifth, quite frankly. Okay. So we're coming up on 6 months, half a year of not having that. And I really appreciate your comment, Joe. Those of us that have been here every time for the last 5 months, it gets frustrating when we can't really conduct business. And I really believe, and the reason I'm here is because I believe that this is a really important forum, and it's a way for us to interact with each other. And I just hope we're not losing all of the momentum that we had.
I agree, and I think we take a pause and we reach out to the group and reach out to the other members and say, we've got to decide what we want to do, because I just feel like we're wasting and people's very valuable time, because everything we've done in these meetings, we have to do over when the rest of the group is here. And
Yes.
I just don't want to keep doing that to staff and to the people that are presenting to us.
Yeah, and it's so much easier now for people to attend with Zoom too.
Yes, that's true.
I mean,
There's not really an excuse.
except like in the cases of Mayor
there's
Murphy.
Oh, Mary Murk, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's different.
There's not many excuses. So.
Mike or Ed, did you chime in here? Any thoughts? Mike McBee.
No, I agree. I mean, I think I know last time the notification for me got lost, so I missed the meeting, which I apologize for. But and from our side, I'm not. We can certainly make sure that Mitch is going to be here when the mayor can't be here as well, so that we have more representation from our side. I think we have to have 6 members per board.
7.
Seven. Yeah, Joe, I think your comments are right on. I've been wondering myself, I've never quite run into something quite like this, where you haven't been able to get a quorum for so many consecutive meetings. Question to me is not so much am I able to attend, as opposed to do I perceive this as a value added that I need to embrace? And if each of the members would kind of examine for themselves and be forthright with the group, perhaps we can figure out a different way of doing this. Maybe monthly meetings aren't the thing. You know, we had talked last year about the potential for every other month meetings. Maybe that doesn't work either, but something needs to work, because there is a value added to getting the municipalities and the county together to discuss issues of mutual concern. So I would like to see this thing go away, but I think it needs to be reexamined as to the value, perceived value, or how do we get more value out of it. I do agree that staff's time to prepare is valued. We have so many things on our plate. We just don't need to take time with examining and discussing that goes nowhere.
I agree.
Good. And I think LATS is a prime example of bi-monthly seems to be working good for that group as well. So maybe that's an option. Maybe we send something out and say we're going to move to bi-monthly. We need to make sure we have 7 members. We're giving everybody every option. Part of me believes that the more we keep doing these meetings with informational purpose, we're not really saying we need a quorum. There are things that need to be done. We have things that we have to deal with. To deal with it, we have to have a quorum or not. So these things are on the table to get done. I'll work on my end to see what I can do, reaching out to people. I think each of us that have been here or done our best to be at every one of these last 5, and I didn't realize it was even that long, but the meeting minutes clearly identify it as being almost that long. We just need to reach out to our fellow members on the team and say, listen, we've got some important items. Let's see what we can do. Let's get a meeting date, the next meeting date, and do our best for as many possible to attend.
Well, I'd like to keep next month meeting date, but I'd really like to see a quorum here, because I'd like to do a presentation based on the Ladies Island Task Force, which is part of everybody's comprehensive plans. And I would like to do a presentation of where that is and what we're doing. The other thing that I'd like to ask is, and Rob, if we can put this out as a memorandum to everybody, I would like everybody to review the action items list for 2021. I think that's where we get the interaction with different people from different municipalities related to what the outstanding issues are that concern each of us. So if everybody could review that action item list, I would greatly appreciate it, and we'll update it, and then we'll maybe that'll help bring some added value again back. I think there's important items on that agenda list still, but there's probably more now. After 5 months, there's got to be some more things that need to be added to it.
I think there's at least one member on here that hasn't been to any of the meetings in the last year. There may be others, but if that person maybe could be approached and asked if they would like to be replaced. So I think the school district has not had a rep here
Right.
at all. So if you want, I'll take that assignment to do that.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd
And
appreciate
I'll also
that.
contact all our county reps that are
Okay.
here too. So,
And
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Alice. Yes.
Likewise, I'll hit the city and we'll make sure that we have better representation in November.
Yeah, I'll do the same. If nothing else, we can do a proxy. We've done that before. It's worked well in the past. If one of us can't make it, we can ask somebody to sit in for us. I mean, it's, any of our council members or even our managers can do that for us. So let's remind everybody that that's an option, and we can do that as well. It's pretty simple to do that. And so we're going to lock in the date of November 19th. And let's get that out, and let's talk, Mike, Chairman, if you could just highlight those items that you think are really important. Let's keep the list to a importance, a small number, to see if we can't gain some excitement and get the people back in the room. And then we can ask what they want on the next agenda from there and when the next meeting would be. So I think that Ladies Island plan is a great thought there, and maybe just that list, going over that list, and we keep it to a couple of small things. We try to get everybody back in the room, and then if you want to have a list of items that we've got to go back and deal with from the last 5 months, and say, okay, when would you like this on the agenda? When do you want the next meeting? To see if we can get the quorum, set some agendas to kind of move forward.
that sounds good, Joe. Appreciate that. And I'll work on getting that out. I'll get something out also that starts to talk about what this discussion was. And the only thing I'd add to the comments that I've had so far is that we do have a presentation with Stephanie Rossi that's already here. And I'd like to ask whether or not, since she's here taking the time, if you would like to defer your presentation, or if you'd like to go ahead and do something now.
Can you tell if Hytham's online?
I do not see him.
Yeah, I am online.
Sorry. Okay. Are you able to load the presentation?
Yeah, I have it up and ready.
Okay. I mean, it's up to you folks. If we have a presentation, about how long do you think? About 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I can make it 10 or 15 minutes.
It's a presentation update on the Military Installation Resiliency Review Project, just to show where we were, where we are now, kind of where we're going. We're kind of in the middle of the project, and we just didn't want to show up in another month with here's the draft. So we were trying to give you all an update on where we are now. And we may also have some folks from the bases online. I can't tell who's all online, but we've invited them.
No.
Joe, Mike, what are your thoughts?
Nope. I'm fine. I've committed the time for this.
I'm fine,
thing.
but-
I'm fine. Let's do the one presentation, and then let's head forward the way we talked about.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I'm going to turn it over to Hytham then, since I already kind of gave you, told you what we're going to be doing, but he's going to need to share his screen so he can do that.
Mike, maybe free food and drink, and then the members will show up.
I'm not sure that that's an incentive. Well, maybe donuts would be. But.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, everyone. Met most of you before, but my name's Hytham Shadow Show Design Engineers. We've been working with LCOG for the past couple of months. I'm digging into some of the resilience issues and understanding how we can help. And we started off, we presented a lot of this before, so I may breeze through, but please pause me if anyone has any questions. Understanding the area of interest and its relationship to the military bases. What we're finding is the community is a large part of the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is a large part of the bases in the community. So that's part of why we aren't just focusing on the bases or immediately adjacent to the bases, but we're really trying to understand the threat, the impact, the unmet needs of the community, the risks involved, and the maps involved with understanding those risks, and creating a series of vulnerability assessments and priority assessments to define projects, responsible parties, and timelines. We are developing maps, and we started some vulnerability assessments, and we wanted to get your input on what we've identified so far. LLDC released some new framework items since we last met. thankfully, it was very close to what we had already started producing. But where we are now is really putting together the assets, the hazards, the exposures, the probability, and understanding the consequences to prioritize and conceptualize impactful projects. Where we are today is really, we'll show you some of the maps. We started some of the vulnerability assessments. We're hoping to come out there, look at things on the ground, have conversations with people and stakeholders, understanding and prioritize clusters and pilots that can really provide opportunities for impact, but also ability to be conceptualized throughout the study area. This is kind of our doodle of what we've been doing. We really went from, we're identifying, we're prioritizing, we're understanding typologies, we're starting to intersect those things and interleave with zoning, and we're validating that as we go with stakeholders and committees like you. And building off of that, we're hoping to apply toolkits that can be replicated and develop a phasing strategy that really understands how to address some of the issues in the community. We showed you some threat models last, but we started digging into great data, Army Corps, local data, and compiling in ways for understanding the risks. This is what we showed you last time. There's really this coupled compounding issue that is occurring today, will continue occurring in the future, and there's low intensity processes that are changing. Your marshes are changing, your marshes are migrating, your marshes are eroding. And then there's also the high intensity event-based impact, flooding, storm surge that we've been building off of. We reviewed this last time. We took some takeaways from stakeholders and takeaways from meetings. I think one of the most important things we noticed is how regional organizations are really taking initiative, and we should build off of that information and data and provide consistent collaboration, understanding that the military is critical to the community today and in the future, and educating the residents on their risks and educating the residents on what they can do is an important part of the issue. Understanding that the environment in the low country is a priority for your economy and your culture, and understanding that we should continue prioritizing cultural continuation in the community, especially with the military groups. And one part of this that we heard a lot of is that we really should think about our statistical findings and analysis in language that is approachable. We try to simplify it, so please provide us feedback on if it's too simple or not simple enough on some of the recommendations. And we compiled data in a way that should hopefully be helpful for our exercise, but helpful for your future as well. So there are really two things that we're analyzing. There's climate event, and there's community assets and services, and their interaction creates a risk. And building off of that risk, there's probabilities and there's consequences to those impacts. And so how do we prioritize it? Can we think about areas where threats are compounding and start thinking about what are the different climate events that we're modeling? These are the three major ones we're understanding. Sunny day flooding. Not every king tide is a sunny day flood, but sometimes there's a probability that wind or storms or some type of secondary issue causes water to really enter areas where it causes problems. And we evaluated the monthly probability of that happening, and building off of that, we looked at storm surge within our time period. Our time period is pretty short, and understand what it is today and where it will change in the future. And we also took another look at fluvial flooding. Fluvial flooding really is the rain bombs. Your low points that are drained by infrastructure or stream, that when a very intense storm comes in, are areas where runoff accumulates. Building off of that, we looked at the community assets. We're still working on these. Understanding marsh is a strong cultural and physical impact, a physical part of the community. And we took a look back at erosion all the way to the 1800s, but we really started with the 1930s to 2016 and highlighted areas where erosion has been a problem and where erosion can be approached. Our storm surge and our shallow coastal flooding, we showed you a graph last time. This is more of a map. What we're noticing within this time period, that the risks of storm surge and the risks of shallow coastal flooding are approaching a similar elevation. And so when we think about the things that you plan for when it comes to hurricanes and emergency response, those same impacts are impacts that we may need to start considering as tides get higher and shallow coastal flooding becomes more prevalent. And you've probably noticed some of the sunny day flooding in your past. I heard the king tide blast was not as high as normal, but some of those elevations do relate to your issues with storm surge. And so combining those two understandings means that we need to start thinking about multi-layered resilient infrastructure, similar to what you've already implemented at Mossy Oak, to be able to address multiple threats and challenges. Fluvial flooding is a different category, but it's a similar context. Understanding where these storage and stormwater areas are existing, where they need to be improved or prioritized, and where future storm surge and tides may impact their ability to convey or restore. And when it comes to marsh loss, you've probably noticed stands of trees that are slowly dying off. We are prioritizing areas that have the risk of loss within 1 foot of tidal change or tidal range, and we are prioritizing the largest contiguous areas. We will start intersecting that with areas of interest, cultural areas, environmental tourism areas, but maybe starting off with some of the data of your history, we can start zooming in to where priority areas may relate to infrastructure and ecology. I'll take you through one quickly, and maybe I'll just kind of pause there and get some input. But one is the junction of 21, and looking back at history and understanding how it's changed is part of our understanding of what we can do. And what we found is when you start seeing the tidal impacts, erosion impacts, the marshland slowly degrading, we start realizing that there are opportunities of improving drainage and improving ecology in some locations. Thinking about the resiliency of this causeway, the resiliency of this intersection when it comes to day-to-day events, like sunny day flooding, and when it comes to larger catastrophic events that may require prioritization of evacuation. And what we found with this specific site is it is a great opportunity and a great place for a living shoreline technique and a way of embedding living oysters or living oyster shells to really help armor, but also accrete and allow this shoreline to grow over its lifetime. And maybe I'll pause there, get any questions before I tell you kind of our next steps.
I volunteer to eat the oysters to get the shells out there.
This is at the Paris Island Gateway, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is this the Paris Island Gateway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's interesting. Any questions before I kind of keep going? So when you think about this specific area and what we're trying to understand when it comes to resiliency, well, you don't have enough room to solve all your problems. And what we're trying to do is prioritize problem areas in ways that can be addressed. And so when we think about this area and its relationship to the environmental services, the ecology that exists and used to exist, we start thinking about its relationship to evacuation and access routes, its impacts during rain bombs, and its impacts during storm surge. You start understanding that areas like this can be prioritized for getting the most bang out of your buck and thinking about future resilience as a way of prioritizing areas of most sensitivity first. And kind of building off of that, that's kind of our next step. You saw one of our interactions and one of our intersections, but we're going to do that throughout the county. And we're open to ideas in areas of already a larger study. We've mapped your PDMUs, we've mapped your areas of septic and water, and really trying to understand where other areas have similar compounding issues that can benefit the community and the military as a whole. And I know part of the largest feedback, you're probably all aware of these plans, was really combining the green plan and the comp plan in a way that takes their takeaways and applies it to our recommendations. And we've started understanding the key takeaways and understanding the community surveys and priorities, understanding that all areas are wanted to be developed, even though they make sense to develop with the data. And we're prioritizing that with ecology and green infrastructure and understanding where the natural environment and the built environment intersect. We're finding great links between the two, and we're building off of that to make sure our recommendations can relate to the high hierarchy or the tiers that have been proposed in the future development and zoning that has been proposed as well. And maybe I'll pause there. We have a bunch of precedents, but I think you guys need to get back to the meeting, but let me know if you want me to keep going.
I would like to put you in touch with our stormwater people, if you haven't already talked to them about Shell Point. They just finished a study of Shell Point, and I can give that to Stephanie. Kate Herrera and Neil Desai have, we had a contractor do a study of that area. It's very similar to Mossy Oaks, and their recommendations would, I think, be valuable in your overall look at that area, which is right off of this gateway.
That'd be great. Our key goal is to make sure we have a short time frame of our study, make sure to integrate it with projects that are being studied and really provide additional layers that can improve resiliency, but also improve your funding opportunities. I wasn't sure if anyone knows why it's called Shell Point. I'm imagining because there used to be a lot of oyster shells there, but that's one part of why we kind of zoomed in quickly to this site.
Mike, do you know Shell Point history?
I'm not sure exactly, but I know that there were oystering on the Broad River side, so it's very likely that is where it came from.
When do you think you'd be ready to do the next presentation? And would that be a draft final, or do you have another intermediate step you'd like to do?
Let me go back to our schedule. So we can, and one thing that's important too is anyone that wants to talk to us, please reach out. We're happy to present more detail and with more information. But what our goal is to kind of meet with you, meet the technical committee, go on site, and understand what things look like on the ground and have more conversations. Start compiling those clusters and thinking about pilot projects and recommended actions and come back to you and come back to the technical committee and probably come back again on site to show and understand where these clusters and pilots are feasible and provide some more context around those. So I'd say we're hoping to come out there early November, first week November is what we're shooting for right now. Happy to meet with any of you folks, and then come December again, we're hoping to come out there before we really kick into the draft report in December and the final report in January.
Thank you.
Who is on the technical committee?
The technical committee is mostly made up of a staff representative from each of the jurisdictions, the county, and then from each phase, the CPLO or.
Okay.
Who's the one from the county?
Well, I've had both of you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I didn't realize it was a technical committee meeting that was.
Yeah, we haven't had one in a while, and then we
Okay,
did the stakeholder engagement, which was kind of a mix of, we went a little beyond the technical committee and expanded that.
Okay.
And Dr. Chris Marsh has also been executive in the technical committee.
It's raining.
One of your earlier slides, and I apologize, I didn't catch, but it was an earlier slide where you were listing stormwater, and all the way on the right slide, it said wastewater. You didn't talk about it. You kind of passed over it. And the question that keeps going through my mind on these type of issues is, yeah, well, that was it. Very good. Traditionally, Beaufort County, we've used sewer as an ability to control growth. Are we getting to the point that we need to think more about the fact that controlling growth with sewer it may be the right thing to do, but allowing septic systems to still exist in areas we want rural or less dense is hurting the environment, and do we need to think about that? Is that something that your study is even thinking about in that way?
That's exactly that map that we're doing in progress right now.
Okay.
And the reason I haven't pulled it up is just we're playing with the colors and the data, and it's hard to combine your sewer and your septic issues. But what we've already identified is where septic does not make sense. Areas with soils that don't make sense, areas that will have common inundation, areas near water bodies or open water. Those are areas areas that we're highlighting that septic does not make sense, but we're also highlighting areas where septic does make sense. Because your limitations of your sewer infrastructure are gravity-based. That doesn't mean there aren't areas where maybe district-scale sewer infrastructure isn't possible, and maybe there are areas where even water reuse is possible. Because one thing we're noticing is you have regional issues when it comes to your wells. And so understanding where your needs for wells, where your needs for septic, where your needs for domestic water, and where your needs for sewer are part of what we're compiling right now. And we got all the data, surprisingly. So.
Great. Thank you for passing that on. It was just something I've been thinking about.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think this is information that everybody is going to find really important with NRPIC. So we might want to talk about scheduling another meeting when we do have a quorum, we do have proper representation. I think this is important. And especially with issues that, like Joe brought up, that's a real, that's interesting for our area, what to do with septic. We haven't done a good job so far in a lot of areas that are out there, so thank you.
And the problem with septic is, although speaking of Shell Point, they solve septic, but it's so expensive to put it in.
Yes.
And the neighborhood is not eligible for CDBG grants, and so it's a catch-22 in some areas like that. So.
Yeah, and we've got septic right up against the
marshes.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. So, all right. Well, thank you. Any other comments that anybody'd like to make before we adjourn?
I wanted to mention something, and I realize in a way I'm kind of preaching to the choir because we're all the people who showed up. But I was invited to Williamson County, Tennessee. This is by Greg Dale, who we've worked with on different projects, to talk about the growth boundaries and our agreements with the municipalities about annexation. And they were very interested in the accomplishments we made. And I guess I'd just like to say that, those efforts 15 years ago when we established the growth boundaries were a major accomplishment. And that and the fact that this committee has met consistently for the most part since that time, I just think that those are two really good things that we need to continue and value in order to be for county, because I don't think we all want to go back to the days where we were just not cooperating and there was just a lot of ill will, every time there was an annexation or development or rezoning. And so I would just encourage, this committee to continue to thrive and, whatever it takes for us to kind of get the membership back and engaged at the table. That I'd like to see those efforts made.
That's a good point. I was telling Rob that I did the courthouse there in Franklin, which is the county seat for Williamson County, and it's interesting because their county board is, I think, 12 members, or maybe
they have, I think, 24. They have
24.
Two representatives for each district.
Yeah, 20.
And then they have the county mayor, which I wasn't familiar with that concept.
And it's real interesting if you're a professional trying to
corral that group
to get consensus. You need a strong leader in that sense. Thank you, Rob. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn, and everybody encourage our peer participation, and let's hope for next month getting a quorum at least, if not a larger crowd. We used to almost not have enough chairs for people, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.